Anwar, Khalif, Shenandoah, Matthew, Laylene, Julio, Shane, Antonio, Christopher, Jeremy, Bradley, Shannon, Jamie, Jaquan, Nicholas, Henry, Jeffrey, Malik, Pliny, Wanda, Angelo, Tyler, Brandon, Jose, John, Marshall, Rashawn, Greg, Freddie, Daryl. These are some of the names of people who have died while or because of solitary confinement in the United States since 2015. This is a tiny fraction of the total amount of deaths by suicide, homicide, or severe illness. Nevertheless, they represent a huge loss for many. These people had loved ones. They had children, husbands, and wives. They were human beings and they were discarded like trash. And let me remind you, the United Nations deems solitary confinement torture. Every day someone attempts suicide in our jails and prisons, with suicide being the leading cause of death in jail. The rate of suicide in jails is over 2 times that of the general public. Mysterious deaths, complications from severe physical and mental illnesses, and overdoses are the leading causes of death in prison. If you're inside and sent to solitary, you don't know if you're coming out in cuffs or in a body bag. My name is Natasha White, and I am a formerly incarcerated survivor of solitary confinement. I am the Director of Community Engagement at IAHR. My journey has been one of resilience, transformation, and an unwavering commitment to ensure that no one else endures the horrors I face with those cold and isolating prison walls. However, so many others are permanently scarred from the torturous practice of solitary confinement. Many find only escape in death. I stand before you as someone who spent a total of 15 years behind bars, with my first 4 years etched in the dark corners of a solitary confinement cell, no larger than the average apartment bathroom. The moment I arrived at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, I was cast into the depths of SHU, left completely alone, grappling with isolation and the echoes of my despair for 19 agonizing days, when the warden finally appeared. Her words marked my faith. Solitary confinement for the entirety of my stay in her prison, is what she said. What was her explanation? What was the justification for condemning me to 4 years of torture? She said it was a security risk linked to my husband's rank and gang affiliation. Let's be clear, I was put in solitary confinement with no due process or recourse simply because my husband, not me, was an alleged member of a gang. And let me remind you, the United Nations deems solitary confinement torture. Torture right here on the soil of the United States. And this happens every day. Most of the time, 85% of the time, this torture is used for minor rule violations and retaliation for speaking out about abuse. For 4 long years, that cramped cell became my entire world. A world completely devoid of sunlight, filled with the stench of feces, forever punctuated by the anguished cries of women trapped in adjacent cells. I never received a visit, a letter, or a package from the outside world. No interaction with anyone except prison staff. I was sexually and physically abused, filled with so much anger that the darkness consumed me. The trauma still lingers, and it's possible that it forever will. Manifested even in my dreams to this day. The horrors of solitary were not only my own, they extended to those trapped around me. I remember listening and banging on my door as a woman in the cell next to me took her own life. The sound of her struggle to grasping the wall with her feet as she hung herself is forever etched in my memory. Once free from solitary confinement, the poison extended beyond those prison walls to my marriage. My husband, too, endured 12 years of solitary, leaving him emotionally disconnected and our marriage irreparably damaged. His oath to love and protect transformed into a nightmarish reality, forcing me to seek refuge in a domestic violence shelter and then relocating from New York to Virginia. This is personal. Never do I want another woman to experience what I had to endure. I do not want her to understand understand the fear of being confined, the fear of whether or not she will make it out alive, and then the fear of what she could become because of confinement. I don't want any woman to feel like me, a stranger to the ones she loves. So I dedicated my life to ending the inhumane practice of solitary confinement, beginning as a community halt organizer, with a big win in March prohibiting long-term isolation in alignment with the Mandela rules, that any more than 15 days is deemed torture. Since then, continuing to fight. As the Director of Community Engagement at Interfaith Action for Human Rights since January, I'm representing both Maryland and Virginia campaigns to end solitary confinement. I met with Maryland Representative Jamie Raskin's office yesterday about the federal bill to end Solitary Confinement Act. Our leaders must acknowledge this practice inflicts immeasurable suffering and burdens on our country's budget to spend on community resources. Studies show that states that limit solitary confinement, this is a long one, y'all, save millions of funds that could be redirected to higher wages for correction officers and essential personnel. In this country, there are about 122,000 people in confinement on any given day. Even though research shows that solitary confinement fails to enhance the safety of both residents and prison administrators, contrary to conventional wisdom, isolating people in solitary does not yield any of the intended benefits. The time to act is now. Erase Act of 2023 is a beacon of hope for DC. I'm grateful for the opportunity to support your coalition in this campaign for safety, freedom, and dignity for people like me. At Interfaith Action for Human Rights, we are working on Virginia and Maryland statewide legislations. Head to the unlockthebox.com website for more information to join the fight. Together, we could create a future where no one suffers in the darkness of isolation, where the echoes of despair can be replaced by the voices of a society that values the dignity and worth of every person. I'm Natasha White. Thank you for your time.